My wife cheated, tried to erase me, and disappeared. But even after I survived her attack, she still found a way to crawl into my thoughts and claim what's left. When I opened my eyes, everything was spinning. I was lying on a cold floor, and there was a searing pain in my chest, like something had torn right through me. Struggling to breathe, I fought to make sense of what had just happened. Every gasp sounded sharp and metallic, slicing through my lungs. Then, nearby, I heard voices. Her voice, my wife Heather of all people. "You didn't have to shoot him, Mike," she hissed, her words sharp, almost angry, not with remorse but with annoyance. There was no pity, no hint of regret in her tone. Instead, she was furious. Furious at him for doing this. Furious at the chaos. Meanwhile, I lay there, listening in horror. I felt the cold dread settling in, like everything I'd thought was true had just crumbled. My wife Heather and this man, Mike, her AP as he called himself in the messages I'd stumbled upon. I wanted to close my eyes to escape this nightmare, but the voices dragged me deeper into reality. Mike's voice was low, calm, almost chilling in its detachment. We couldn't let him ruin things, you know that. And in that single sentence, the truth hit me like a second blow. This wasn't some impulsive mistake. They had planned this, planned to get rid of me, to remove me from the equation entirely. I was just an obstacle, and they decided it was time to eliminate it. "Fine," Heather snapped, her voice tense. "But what about our daughter? What am I supposed to tell her?" There was a sliver of hesitation in her tone, but only a sliver. My heart sank further as I thought of our daughter, Emma. She was at the center of my world. And now, without even knowing it, she was entangled in this brutal betrayal. I could feel the darkness closing in, the shock and pain morphing into something else, a fierce, desperate resolve. I wasn't ready to go down like this, not while she needed me. Somehow, I would find the strength to survive, to fight back. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I lay still, fighting through the fog in my head, knowing that every second was crucial. Heather and Mike thought I was out, maybe even dead, but I was very much awake, every nerve alert, listening to their whispers, feeling the searing pain that tethered me to life. As I listened, I felt my blood boiling in a way I'd never experienced before. I wasn't the guy who'd just lie there, a victim in his own life. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I was going to use every last ounce of strength to get out of this. Heather's voice broke into my thoughts. "Listen, we need a story, something believable. You know Josh's brother lives a few hours away. I'll say he left to visit him and never came back." Her words felt like knives, but Mike didn't seem impressed. "And what about his phone? The guy's all over it, constantly tracking things. We get rid of him and someone's bound to look. I don't need that kind of attention." They were talking logistics, like I was some inconvenience they were dealing with, something to clean up. Rage seethed inside me, and it kept me focused. Quietly, I reached into my pocket, feeling for my phone, hoping they hadn't noticed it. To my relief, it was still there, though the battery was nearly dead. I didn't have time to think. I needed to do something now, even if it was a long shot. Without making a sound, I tapped a quick message to my brother Keith, but I didn't have enough signal here to send a full message. I only managed to type "Help Heather" before the signal cut out. I could only hope Keith would notice the half message and know something was wrong, but for now, I was on my own. I forced myself to keep breathing shallowly, praying they wouldn't notice me moving. Heather started pacing, her heels clicking on the floor, her voice barely a whisper. "Just make sure no one finds out, Mike. I need my life to go on. I don't need him hanging over my shoulder forever." Her words made it clear she'd already moved on, that she'd seen me as a nuisance for a while. Mike's footsteps came closer, and my pulse spiked. He knelt down, and I felt his hand press against my neck, checking my pulse. I went completely still, barely breathing, willing my heart to slow. He pulled back and muttered, "He's alive, but barely, not much time left." In that moment, I knew I had only one option, to play dead until they left. Then I'd have to escape. It was risky, but it was my only shot. As I lay there, I listened to Heather and Mike's footsteps fading as they discussed more arrangements outside. I knew I had seconds, maybe a minute, before they came back. Summoning every bit of strength I had, I rolled myself painfully toward the back door, stifling a groan as the pain seared through me. But I kept moving, inch by inch, every part of my body screaming for me to stop. I reached the door and pushed myself up just enough to slip out into the night. The cold air hit me hard, shocking me awake, giving me a tiny burst of energy. I staggered toward the woods behind the house, where I knew I could hide if they came looking. I only made it a few yards before collapsing, my vision blurred. For a moment, I thought it was over, but then I heard the back door open, Heather's angry voice calling out to Mike. Where the hell did he go? Their voices were close, too close. Panic surged through me, and I forced myself to crawl further into the trees, using the darkness to hide. My breathing was ragged, my pulse pounding so loudly in my ears that I was sure they'd hear it, but I kept moving, keeping my body pressed close to the ground. From my hiding spot, I watched as they walked around the yard, their flashlights sweeping the area. Mike cursed under his breath. If he's out here, he won't get far in his condition, but we need to make sure. Heather was seething. This is supposed to be clean, Mike. If he makes it to someone, we're both done for. Their words gave me a sick satisfaction. They didn't know it, but they just lit a fire under me. This was about survival now, about making sure they'd regret every second of this twisted plan. As soon as they turned back toward the house, I seized my chance and crawled deeper into the woods. I knew I couldn't get far in my condition, but I didn't need to go far. I just needed enough distance to get to the road, to flag someone down, to survive. Every move was agony, but I forced myself to keep going. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Heather had betrayed me, but she didn't know what I was capable of yet. She was about to find out. My breaths were shallow, every inch forward a battle against the burning pain in my chest. But I kept going, inching through the underbrush, driven by a raw, unrelenting need to survive. The further I got from Heather and Mike, the stronger my focus became. This wasn't just about getting away. It was about making them pay for what they'd done, what they'd planned to do. I made it about 50 yards into the woods when the sharp beam of a flashlight sliced through the darkness. I froze, pressing myself flat against the ground, biting down against a cry as pain shot through my chest. Heather's voice broke the silence, eerily calm, almost chilling. "I know you're out here, Josh," she called, her voice drifting through the trees. "You really think you're going to get away after everything?" My hands clenched into fists as I lay there, her words stirring something dangerous inside me. I was just a few yards from the road, but there was no way I'd make it there without being spotted. So I stayed quiet, keeping my head down, hoping the darkness would keep me hidden. I could hear her footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. She wasn't calling out to me for help, she wanted to find me herself. And then, just when I thought she might pass by, her light stopped dead on me. Her face twisted into a smirk as our eyes met. She took a few steps closer, whispering as if she'd already won, "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" I tried to push myself up, but the pain was too much. Heather stood over me, looking down with something between amusement and disgust. "You could have just stayed out of it," she sneered. "We could have done this quietly, but no, you just had to be the hero." I fought to hold her gaze, anger flaring in my chest despite the pain. "You really think you're going to get away with this?" I rasped, barely able to get the words out. Her smirk only widened. "Who's going to believe you, Josh? You're bleeding out in the woods in the middle of the night. No one's coming for you." She paused, lowering her voice to a dangerous whisper. "Mike's already ready to tell people you ran off with some cash, left your poor wife and daughter behind. Do you really think anyone's going to question it?" Her confidence was staggering, but I'd had enough. I wasn't about to let her have the last word. Summoning what little strength I had left, I spat out, "You'll slip up, Heather. They always do. And when you do, I'll be there to watch it all come down." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt. But it was quickly replaced by an icy determination. She raised her phone, dialing a number with one hand while keeping the flashlight trained on me. "Mike," she said smoothly when he picked up, "come to the clearing. I've got him." Panic surged through me. I had minutes, maybe seconds, and then out of nowhere I heard it, the faint sound of tires crunching on gravel. A car was coming down the road, its headlights piercing the darkness. Heather's head whipped toward the sound, and I seized the moment, kicking at her legs with everything I had. She stumbled just enough for me to drag myself a few inches further toward the road, my one shot at freedom. I pushed myself forward, each inch feeling like a mile, the car lights drawing closer. Heather lunged toward me, but the car slowed, its headlights illuminating both of us. The driver honked, and Heather pulled back, her mask of calm slipping as she realized she was no longer alone. The car door opened, and to my utter shock, my brother Keith stepped out, eyes widening as he took in the scene before him. "Josh," he called, voice shaky. "What the hell is going on here?" Heather immediately slipped into her act, a look of horror spreading across her face. "Oh, thank God you're here, Keith," she cried, running to him. Josh was hurt. I was just trying to help him. He got confused and wandered out here, and I didn't know what to do. Keith's face hardened as he looked between us, and something in his eyes told me he wasn't buying it. "Really?" he asked, his tone laced with skepticism. He took a step closer to me, eyes scanning my injuries, the fear in my face. "Because it doesn't look like you were helping him at all, Heather." Heather's face paled, and for a split second I saw the panic she was trying so hard to hide. She tried to laugh it off, reaching out to Keith. "You don't understand, Keith. He's been acting so strange lately, paranoid even. I just wanted to make sure he didn't hurt himself." But Keith wasn't listening. He was already dialing 911, his eyes fixed on her as he spoke. I think it's time we let the police sort this out. Heather's face contorted, a flash of rage breaking through her composed mask. She took a step back, clearly realizing that her story was crumbling. No, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. You don't understand, Keith. I've worked too hard for this life to let him ruin it. She glanced at me, her eyes dark, cold. You want to destroy everything, Josh? Fine. But don't expect me to go down quietly. And before we could react, she turned and bolted into the darkness of the woods, her figure disappearing into the shadows. Keith rushed over to me, kneeling by my side. We'll get you help, Josh. You're safe now, he said, his voice steady, reassuring. And for the first time that night, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this. But even as we waited for the police to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Heather was out there somewhere in the darkness, and if I'd learned anything tonight, it was that she wouldn't stop until she got exactly what she wanted. And I knew, deep down, that our final confrontation was still ahead of us. As the sirens grew closer, the relief I felt was quickly overtaken by a deeper dread. Heather had vanished into the woods, her plan unraveling, but I knew her well enough to understand that she wasn't one to give up easily. She would come back, lurking, scheming, determined to reclaim control. Keith stayed close, his hand on my shoulder, reassuring me as we waited for the paramedics. We're getting you out of this, Josh, he said quietly, but I could see the concern in his eyes. The silent question of what on earth had driven Heather to do something this twisted. The police arrived and I gave my statement, barely able to get the words out. I described the betrayal, the shot, and Heather's terrifying transformation. I watched the officers' faces as I spoke, their expressions shifting from disbelief to grim understanding. Heather had escaped, but they assured me a search team would comb the woods. They'd bring her in. But I knew Heather. She'd already be thinking 2 steps ahead, waiting for her next opportunity. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was about to happen. I'd thought this was the end, that once I'd escaped her, it would be over. But Heather wasn't done with me. I could feel it, like a shadow hanging over me. The ambulance took off, and I drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain and exhaustion finally taking their toll. But just when I thought I could finally rest, my phone, miraculously still in my pocket, buzzed. Through a haze of pain, I pulled it out, expecting maybe a message from Keith, a concerned friend, anyone. But the message that popped up on the screen made my blood run cold. Unknown number. You really thought it would be that easy, Josh? I blinked, trying to make sense of it. Heather had my number, but she wouldn't risk texting me after everything, unless she'd thought of this all along. A plan to taunt me, to remind me that she was always there, watching. Then another message came through. Unknown number. Look at the driver, Josh. My heart hammered in my chest as I glanced up, every nerve in my body on edge. The ambulance driver's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, a slight smirk playing on his lips. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a random paramedic. This was someone working for her. I fumbled for the lock on the gurney, my hands shaking. Where are you taking me? I demanded, struggling to keep my voice steady. The driver's smirk widened. Heather wanted to make sure you'd be in safe hands, he said calmly, taking a sharp turn off the main road. The other paramedic in the back shifted, his eyes cold, unfeeling. I was trapped, helpless in the back of a moving vehicle, hurtling who knows where, with 2 people who had no intention of helping me. Desperation surged through me. I had to think fast. My phone was nearly dead, but I managed to send a single word to Keith before the screen went black. Help. I needed a plan if I wanted to survive this. I had to act now. Summoning every ounce of strength I had, I pushed against the restraints, ignoring the searing pain. The other paramedic reached to restrain me, but I used the only thing I had left. Surprise. I swung my arm up, knocking his hand back, and managed to unlock one side of the gurney restraint with my free hand. The driver glanced back, annoyed. Settle down, Josh, he said, his voice mocking. You're only making it worse for yourself. But I was done with their games. With one final push, I broke free from the restraints and lunged toward the back door. It was a reckless, desperate move, but it was all I had. I grabbed the emergency release handle and yanked it open, the cold night air rushing into the ambulance as the doors swung wide. I threw myself out, barely managing to roll onto the asphalt as the ambulance screeched to a halt. Pain tore through me, but adrenaline drove me forward, forcing me to my feet as I staggered toward the tree line. The headlights swung around, blinding me, but I pushed forward, desperate to put as much distance between me and that ambulance as possible. Behind me, I could hear the driver cursing, footsteps pounding as they came after me. I ducked into the woods, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. I was barely holding it together, but every step forward was a step closer to freedom, a step further from Heather's reach. I stumbled through the underbrush, hearing their voices behind me, getting closer. My body screamed at me to stop, to rest, but I couldn't afford to. Not now. And then, through the darkness, I saw it. A small cabin tucked among the trees, its windows dark, seemingly abandoned. I sprinted toward it, throwing myself against the door and praying it was unlocked. It was. I stumbled inside, slamming the door behind me, locking it as quietly as I could. I could hear their voices outside, moving closer, but for now, I had a moment to breathe, to think. I scanned the cabin, looking for anything I could use. My eyes landed on an old hunting rifle propped up in the corner, covered in dust. I grabbed it, checking for ammunition, relief flooding through me as I found it was loaded. The voices outside grew louder, and I positioned myself by the window, watching as the driver and paramedics searched the area, their flashlights sweeping through the darkness. They were close, too close. My heart pounded, but this time it wasn't fear that drove me. It was a cold, hard determination. I wasn't going to be their victim anymore. As they moved closer to the cabin, I raised the rifle, aiming for the door. This wasn't just survival anymore. Heather had crossed a line and I was done running. The footsteps outside slowed, the flashlight beams slicing through the windows, illuminating the cabin's walls in sharp, erratic sweeps. My finger hovered over the trigger of the rifle as I waited, barely daring to breathe. I had one chance, maybe two if I was lucky, but this time, I wasn't going to miss. They stopped just outside the door, murmuring in low voices. I couldn't make out every word, but what I did hear sent a chill down my spine. "He'll be weak," the driver muttered. "This won't take long. Heather's expecting us to clean this up." A sick feeling washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a rush of adrenaline. This was it. Either they'd break through the door and finish what Heather had started, or I'd make my stand. Slowly, I took a step back, positioning myself behind an overturned table. If they stormed in, I'd have just enough time to react. The door rattled, and a second later they kicked it in. The driver entered first, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, with the paramedic close behind. I waited until they were fully inside, their backs to me, before taking my shot. The blast echoed through the cabin, the recoil hitting me hard, but I held steady. The driver crumpled to the floor, his flashlight clattering beside him. The other man whirled around, his face twisted with shock, and I didn't give him a chance to react. I swung the rifle, catching him across the face, knocking him to the ground. He groaned, reaching for something in his pocket, a knife. I kicked it out of his hand, pinning him down. Anger flooded through me as I looked down at him, my voice coming out in a low, dangerous growl. "Where is she?" The paramedic laughed, a twisted grin spreading across his face, even as blood trickled down his chin. "Heather's long gone, Josh. You'll never find her." But I wasn't buying it. Heather wouldn't leave without tying up every loose end. That wasn't her style. She'd be nearby, waiting for confirmation that I was out of the picture. I pressed the rifle against his chest, the weight of it grounding me. "Where is she?" The man's grin faltered, his eyes flicking toward the woods. "You think she's stupid enough to come here alone? She's got friends, people you don't even know about. She'll be miles away before you get out of these woods." But I saw the fear in his eyes. He was bluffing. Heather was closer than he wanted me to believe, and I had no intention of giving her the upper hand. Leaving him groaning on the floor, I grabbed the driver's flashlight and slipped out of the cabin, my movements quiet. The woods loomed dark and silent, but I could feel her out there, lurking, waiting. I knew her too well. She'd be watching, needing to see for herself that I was really gone. I took a deep breath and forced myself to limp, to appear as weak as she expected. If I was going to do this, I'd have to play it her way. I stumbled through the trees, using the flashlight to create just enough noise and light to give away my position. I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a glint of light off metal. Heather, hiding behind a tree, gun in hand, poised to finish what she'd started. She thought she had the drop on me, thought I was helpless. But this time, I wasn't going down without a fight. I stumbled closer, pretending not to notice her, keeping my breathing shallow and ragged. And then when I was just within range, I turned, dropping the flashlight and raising the rifle. Her eyes widened, surprise flashing across her face as she realized I'd known all along. "Game over, Heather," I said, my voice steady, colder than I'd ever heard it. For a moment, she looked stunned, as if the reality of her actions was finally sinking in. But then her lips twisted into a sneer, that familiar arrogance returning. "You don't have the guts, Josh," she taunted, raising her gun in response. "You're weak. You always have been. That's why this was so easy for me." I steadied the rifle, forcing myself to keep my hands from shaking. Maybe I was, but not anymore. For a moment we stood there, guns raised, a tense silence stretching between us. She was daring me, trying to goad me into backing down, into giving her one last chance. But I could see through her. Heather's confidence was cracking, her calm facade slipping. "I loved you," I said, barely recognizing the hurt in my own voice. We built a life together, and this is what you wanted all along." She laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "You don't get it, do you? This was never about you. It was about me, Josh. I deserve better than you, more than this small, pathetic life you tried to keep me trapped in." Her words stung, but they also steeled my resolve. This wasn't the woman I'd married. She'd turned into someone else, someone I barely recognized. And whatever she'd become, I couldn't let her walk away from this. "Goodbye, Heather," I said, my voice barely a whisper. But just as I prepared to pull the trigger, a noise erupted from the trees behind her. Flashlights, voices, the police finally arriving. Heather turned, distracted for a split second. I seized the rifle and lowered it as the officers surrounded her, their guns drawn. She dropped her weapon, realizing she was cornered. The look in her eyes shifted from fury to panic, a fear I'd never seen before. As they cuffed her, she screamed, thrashing, trying to turn back to face me. "You think this is over, Josh?" she shouted, her voice wild, desperate. "You'll never be free of me. Never." I watched as they dragged her away, her words echoing through the woods. As the silence returned, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. She was right about one thing. I'd never truly be free of the memory of what she'd done. But I'd survived, and that, for now, was enough. After Heather was taken away, I thought I'd finally be able to breathe again. But a few weeks later, as I settled back into a semblance of normal life, strange things began to happen. I'd walk into a room and find things moved. Small items went missing, like my keys or wallet, only to turn up in odd places later. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia, lingering trauma. But it didn't stop there. One night, a text popped up on my phone from an unknown number. "Did you miss me?" My heart stopped. I knew it had to be Heather. Somehow, she'd found a way to taunt me from behind bars. But as I called the prison to report it, they assured me that Heather hadn't had any phone access. She was in solitary confinement, locked away. They practically laughed it off. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was reaching out, lurking, somehow still watching. Then one evening, while I was home alone, I heard footsteps upstairs, the creak of floorboards, quiet, purposeful. My blood ran cold as I grabbed the rifle I'd kept close ever since that night in the cabin. Slowly, I made my way up the stairs, the weight of each step matching the thud of my heartbeat. As I reached the top, I saw a shadow flicker in the hallway. My pulse spiked. "Who's there?" I demanded, aiming the rifle ahead of me. Silence. I pushed open the door to my bedroom, ready to face whatever had come to haunt me. But the room was empty. I lowered the rifle, relief flooding through me. But then I heard a faint noise, a whisper barely audible, coming from the corner of the room. I turned, and there, scrawled in red lipstick across the mirror, I gasped. A single line read, "I told you, Josh. I'm always watching." I stumbled back, unable to believe my eyes. How could she have done this? Heather was supposed to be miles away, locked up. Yet here were her words, taunting me, mocking me. I searched the house from top to bottom, every closet, every corner, but I found no one. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air, leaving only her ghost behind. Days passed, and the eerie incidents continued. My friends tried to hide their skepticism, saying it was just my mind playing tricks, but I couldn't ignore it. I knew Heather better than anyone. This was exactly her style, an elaborate game designed to make me question my sanity, to make me feel helpless and paranoid. Then, late one night, my phone rang. The caller ID showed blocked, but something urged me to pick up. "Hello?" I answered, my voice barely a whisper. There was silence on the other end. I was about to hang up when a soft laugh filled the line, low and familiar. "Miss me?" I froze, my blood turning to ice. It was her voice, unmistakably Heather's, but it sounded different, colder, even more calculating. "How did you calling me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Did you really think I'd let you move on so easily?" She whispered, her voice soft, almost gentle. "You ruined everything, and now it's my turn." Before Josh could I respond, the line went dead. I immediately called the prison, demanding answers. The guard on duty confirmed in a bored tone that Heather was still in her cell, with no visitors, no phone privileges. They assured me it was impossible for her to contact anyone, but the voice on the line, that laughter, it had been real. And I knew she wasn't done with me yet. The next morning, I found a small box waiting on my doorstep. I looked around, the street eerily quiet, no sign of who'd left it. Cautiously, I picked it up, bringing it back inside and setting it on the kitchen table. My hands shook as I lifted the lid, revealing a single note, a small item, a small silver locket. Inside was a note of a photo of Heather and me from years ago, tucked before into everything went wrong. The box was tucked into a handwritten note, was handwritten in her elegant script. It read, "I told you we're forever, Josh. Even love can't end." I stumbled back. horror flooding through me. Heather wasn't just trying to scare me, she was making good on her promise. Over the next few days, the tension mounted. I'd hear laughter echoing in the house at night, catch fleeting glimpses of her in reflections, as if she were just standing behind me, always watching, always waiting. My own home had become a prison, each room a reminder that she was never really gone. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, exhausted and on edge, I heard a faint tapping at the window. I looked up, my heart racing, but no, there was nothing, just the darkness pressing against the glass. But as my eyes snapped away, I turned single away. A word appeared, traced in my finger in condensation, soon. I couldn't take it anymore. Desperate, I packed a bag, determined to pack up and leave, determined to escape whatever twisted game Heather had set in motion to Dan. But as I reached my house, the front door stood blocked. I found a figure standing just beyond my threshold by a figure, barely visible in the shadows standing beyond me. My breath caught in my throat as I stood frozen, stared, unable to move, frozen by the impossible sight before my eyes. Her eyes locked onto mine, hers locked smile playing on her lips as she stood, daring to dare me outside, to confront the nightmare she'd become. "Leaving so soon?" she whispered, her voice carrying a soft whisper through the night. I blinked, and just like that, she was gone, her figure vanishing into the darkness. In that moment, I realized the terrible truth. Her Heather hadn't gone beyond mere revenge. It was beyond mere obsession. It's a haunting presence, a shadow bound to me in ways I couldn't understand, relentless in her pursuit, Dan. And I knew with sickening certainty that I'd never be free of her. No matter how far I could run, no matter how many doors I locked, she would always find a way back to me. She had turned our love into a twisted obsession, a nightmare, inescapable, and I couldn't escape. After Heather's ghostly appearance, I could barely sleep. Each night felt like an endless watch, my mind racing, trapped between paranoia and exhaustion. Every question creak of the floorboard, every shadow felt intrusive, like her presence creeping closer, always closer. I didn't know how much longer I could take it this. Then, just as I was reaching my breaking point, I received an email from a private investigator, someone I hadn't contacted myself. The subject line read, "Urgent, regarding Heather." With trembling hands, I opened it, skimming through the message. The investigator claimed to have information about Heather, something no one had told me. His words felt unreal. "Mr. Green, I was recently hired to investigate a case involving your wife, Heather. I believe she may be far more dangerous than you realize. I'm sending you my findings, and I'd advise you to read carefully. Meet me tomorrow at the address below. Be cautious, she may not be who you think she is." Attached to the email was a file. I hesitated, then clicked it open, feeling a wave of dread as I scrolled through the documents. The investigator had uncovered something horrifying. Heather had been involved in strange, dark activities long before I'd met her. I read through police reports, interviews, even photos. In her teenage years, she had been a teenager, person of interest, a person in fascination, in several disturbing incidents involving ex-boyfriends, friends, ex-boyfriends, and people who'd mysteriously vanished, suffered, or simply vanished mysteriously. Her records were spotless. She'd been cleared each time, but the reports painted a chilling picture of manipulation and control. As the woman I scrolled past, one chilling document stood out, a psychiatric evaluation, buried deep in her record in a chilling evaluation. The report described her unforgiving, as highly intelligent, charismatic, yet dangerous, yet charismatic, yet pathologically obsessive, with a history of possessing, controlling relationships obsessively, each one ending disastrously ended for her partners. The final paragraph read, "Subject exhibits signs of sociopathic tendencies, displaying an extreme attachment to relationships that borders on obsession, to the point of fixation bordering on fixation. She shows little remorse or empathy, seeing her partners as extensions of her own identity. Recommend close monitoring should any escalation occur." My stomach churned. I realized with sickening clarity that I'd been unaware living with a stranger all these years. This wasn't about revenge, this was about ownership. A possessive fixation that didn't fade even in the face of separation or distance. And now that I'd escaped, survived her attempt to murder, removed, she wasn't just angry, she angry. Determined was determined to keep me as hers, one way or another. The next day I arrived at the investigator's office, but when I got entered, the place was eerily silent. The room deadly silent. The blinds were drawn, a single lamp casting shadows illuminating a room. A faint coppery smell hung in the air of the cluttered desk. My heart raced as I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice echoed unanswered. Silence responded. I moved deeper further, my skin prickling with unease. Then I saw it. A note on his desk, scrawled with my name, scrawled across the top in hurried handwriting. Josh, she found, knew me. She knows I've contacted you. Get out now. She'll stop at nothing. There's something else you need to know. Check the last entry in her file. And remember, she doesn't care about consequences. The hairs on my neck stood up as I quickly pulled out my phone and opened the file again, scrolling down to the final chilling page. My blood went cold as I read the words, "Subject has documented interests in rituals and psychological manipulation, using them as a means to keep control. Believes in a bond that transcends physical life. Has referenced binding partners to her using whatever means necessary to retain possession of those she claims to love." I felt the room closing in on me. Her chilling words from the night she was taken away echoing in my mind, "You'll never be free of me." It dawned on me with horrifying clarity. Heather wasn't haunting me in the conventional sense. She had orchestrated everything, somehow reaching me from wherever she was. She'd left traps, signals, messages, each designed to keep me under her control, tethered to her by fear. As I stood there, trying to process it all, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Josh, it's almost over. Just come home. I'll be waiting." My breath hitched. Heather was calling me back to the place we'd shared, the place she'd made her own domain. But this time, I knew that going back would mean stepping fully into her web, letting her have exactly what she wanted. But something shifted inside me. I was done running, done being her puppet. If Heather wanted me to come back, I would, but I'd be bringing a fight she didn't expect. With a grim determination, I grabbed the investigator's notes, stuffing them into my bag, and made my way back to the house. It was time to end this once and for all. As I entered the house that night, a strange calm settled over me. The place that was mine dark, empty, but filled with her presence. A shadow that lingered. Shadows flickered in every corner across the walls, each one a reminder of the life we'd once shared, now twisted by her fixation. Our home was hers. I made my way to the living room, my steps echoing softly in the silence. And then, out of the darkness, I saw her. A figure sitting in her chair by the window, her silhouette barely visible in the dim moonlight. "Heather," she said softly, her head turning to look up, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "Welcome back home, Josh," she whispered. I kept my voice steady, my hands clenched tightly at my sides. "This ends now, Heather. You don't own me." She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with a strange, unsettling light. "But Josh, you don't understand, see? I don't want to own you, she said. "We're bound, you and I. Nothing ever can change that. You can run, but never. You'll always come back to me. Always." My words sent a chill through me. I took another step back, my voice forcing myself to stay calm. "No, you're done controlling me." Her voice laughed softly, sinister and soft. "Control?" she murmured. "I don't need control. I need you to remember every day that you're mine, that no matter where you go, I'll be there, a shadow in your mind." And with that, she faded, her figure dissolving into the darkness. I staggered back, my heart pounding as the realization struck me. She hadn't been here physically. She was in my mind, a lingering imprint, a psychological scar that would stay with me forever. In that moment, I understood the truth. Heather's control had gone beyond physical presence. She'd planted herself in my thoughts, an obsession that would haunt me, a part of her living on, bound to me. I left the house that night, knowing I could never truly be free. Heather had won, but not in the way she'd expected. She would haunt me, her memory inescapable, her presence a permanent fixture in my mind. And as I walked into the night, her laughter echoed in my head, a final reminder that some bonds are unbreakable, even in darkness, even in death. I left the house that night, thinking I could leave her behind, that maybe, just maybe, I could outrun her memory, put miles between myself and her haunting shadow. But Heather had always been 2 steps ahead of me, and even now, she hadn't finished her game. The first sign that she wasn't truly gone came a few nights later. I'd checked into a quiet, secluded motel, hoping for a night's peace, but sleep was impossible. The darkness of the room felt suffocating, closing in with a weight that reminded me of her presence. I had just started to drift off when I heard it, a faint knock on the door. I froze, my pulse spiking, every hair on my body standing on end. 3 slow knocks, rhythmic, deliberate. With my heart in my throat, I crossed the room, gripping the door handle tightly. My mind raced, conjuring every possibility, but none that made sense. I took a steadying breath and opened the door, half expecting to see her standing there with that unsettling smile. But the hallway was empty. I stepped outside, glancing up and down, only to see a piece of paper lying on the ground at my feet. Cautiously, I picked it up, my hands shaking as I unfolded it. Scrawled in familiar handwriting were 3 simple words: "You can't hide." I stumbled back, slamming the door shut, my mind spiraling. How? How was she still reaching me? How was she always a step ahead, always lurking like a shadow I couldn't escape? And then I remembered the file, the investigator's report, her fixation on psychological manipulation, her belief in binding herself to people, transcending even physical space. Heather hadn't just been obsessed. She had woven herself into the very fabric of my life, my thoughts. She wasn't content with simply haunting me. She wanted to be a part of me, an inescapable presence that would drive me to the edge. The days that followed blurred together, each one punctuated by subtle, chilling signs that she was still with me. Mirrors would fog with her handwriting. My phone would ring late at night, only to play her laughter on the other end, her voice echoing through my mind when I was alone. I couldn't trust my own senses. I began to lose touch with reality, constantly questioning what was real and what was her influence. And then, one night, I saw her in my reflection. I had just splashed cold water on my face, trying to shake the exhaustion, when I looked up and saw her standing behind me in the mirror, her eyes piercing into mine. She looked almost serene, as if this was the way it was always meant to be. I spun around, but of course, the room was empty. Only the reflection remained, her image fixed in the mirror, smiling as she whispered softly, "Are you ready to accept it, Josh?" My chest tightened as her words seeped into my mind, wrapping around me like chains. I had spent months running, fighting, trying to escape her hold, but now I understood. Heather wasn't something I could fight. She wasn't even a person anymore. She had become something darker, an embodiment of all the fear, obsession, and control that had bound us together. My mind flashed back to that last line in the investigator's report. She believes in a bond that transcends physical life. I'd thought it was delusion, but now I understood the terrible truth. Heather had somehow fused herself with me, become a part of my very consciousness. The more I resisted, the stronger she grew, feeding off my fear, my defiance, using my mind as her playground. I felt my knees buckle, a wave of cold washing over me. And then, in a moment of clarity, I realized that the only way to end this was to confront her, to let her know she'd won. Slowly, I straightened, meeting her gaze in the mirror, my own reflection standing beside hers. "You're here to stay, aren't you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled, an expression both haunting and oddly peaceful. "I told you, Josh. We're forever." And in that moment, I let go of the fight. I stopped resisting her presence, stopped trying to outrun her. I accepted that she was here, that she had bound herself to me in a way I could never sever. The weight of it sank into me, heavy, final, and yet freeing. As her reflection faded, I felt an unsettling calm wash over me. The relentless noise in my mind quieted, her laughter and whispers receding like a wave. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was hollow, an empty void where her presence had been. And in that quiet, a realization struck me, chilling me to the core. Heather had fused herself to me so deeply that without her I was incomplete. She had carved out a part of me, one I would never get back. I left the motel the next morning, feeling like a shell of who I once was. Heather had won, not by haunting me, but by becoming part of me, a permanent scar on my soul. I would carry her with me forever, her presence lingering in every shadow, every quiet moment, her memory woven into the fabric of my mind. And as I drove down the endless road, a whisper echoed softly in my head, her final gift to me, a reminder that no matter how far I went, how many miles I put between us, she would always be there. "I'm with you, Josh, always." And in that moment, I understood the truth. Some bonds are unbreakable, some shadows impossible to escape. Heather had become my forever ghost, and from now on, wherever I went, she would be right there beside me until the end.